let's see, next item is the 2016-2017 work plan.
Yeah, I've put this item on here, really not so much for your making any decisions, but also trying to gather, some of you are leaving, and I wanted to gather some of your input into what you think might be some things for the future commission to consider, not locking them into anything. You're not going to be making any decisions under this item. You're not starting the work plan discussion. This is really to gather information for folks that are still around the table heading into the work plan development early next year, August, September.
Illegal fireworks.
I'm sorry, what?
Illegal fireworks.
A continuation of that?
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I'm going to be sending you, within the next few days, flyers regarding illegal fireworks. Okay. I've been asked by my bosses to give you a series of flyers and other things because we're entering into the July season when the fire department is going to be doing their pilot. So expect those within the next couple of days then, both for your information as well as to pass out to your neighborhood groups then. Good. I just got that today.
Has there been any discussion of LED signs at all within neighborhoods and their potential effects when they're, especially when they're really large, not just small ones? Has there been, because we've had that issue in our neighborhood, there's a LED sign that's 250 feet that shines.
So the city every so often revises its billboard ordinance, and they discuss how many lumens and how many square meters it can have and location.
And the neighborhood says, no, don't do that in our neighborhood, and the planning department says, approved.
Okay, so you would like the neighborhoods commission to comment upon the billboard ordinance?
Provide input of some kind, yeah.
Okay.
Because I think when the ordinance went in, I think when the ordinance went in, they were looking at something like signs that might be in front of a church that would be 10 square feet, and it's going to say when what the topic of the next meeting is, or what our time their services are. And then when you get something that's 85 feet tall and has 500 illuminated square feet with 200...
For a shopping center next to a freeway, right?
For a shopping center next to a freeway, across percolation ponds and the riparian corridor, into neighborhood houses that are within 1,000 feet. And let me just tell you, we can make hand puppets on the wall with that sign when it's fully lit, from the one that is 3,500 feet away, that was over there until that whole thing started. Let's just say when they introduced the guy, they said, and here's the guy that's going to present about our sign, and he's the one that worked on the sign at the Costco. And it was like, get out the knives and pitchforks. It turns out that sign was not following the guidance, or no, the regulations on when it was supposed to be dimming. It wasn't following guidelines of any sort. It was just on full, all bright, all night, all the time. And they left that meeting and went and fixed that sign to make it better, but not great.
Okay. I was going to say you want to not do too much during the year because you want to save time for things to come up during the year. You never know exactly what's going to come along, so don't overfill your agenda. I keep on thinking about how there's going to be all these urban villages coming into the city, and how are they going to impact with the neighborhoods, rather than each neighborhood dealing with each individual one. That would definitely be in the planning department and so forth, the actual details on that, but kind of a general interface policy, something I kept on thinking would be worthwhile for this group to look at. Come up with some guidelines to help the city with their planning on interfaces.
Yeah. For instance, broader notification.
And then that was one of the things that came before us 4 years ago about the, was it 076 policy or 070, the outreach policy, that some things you have to notify for 500 feet, some things have to be 1,000 feet, but what is the outreach for things where you change an ordinance or change a policy that has ripples throughout the entire city, how you notify about that? So a review of the outreach policy maybe might be worth studying. A review of the sunshine law to make sure that the public is informed of these things, transparencies. Work with the city on the smart vision or whatever smart city thing. Yes.
I'd like to start a conversation around a pilot for community policing in the city.
For the what now?
For community policing,
Okay.
it's a program broadly where police officers are implanted or stay with the community for a long time, years, not months, and get to know the communities, get to know the neighbors, patterns. We can certainly rely on the data that Shereen talked about, but I think adding the human element to it would be a necessary complement. So, and I think this commission, since we deal with public safety, this would fall right under our work.
Yeah, that falls squarely in your bailiwick.
You mentioned community policing. Interesting, this last week, a friend, a retired officer who's in his 80s, shared a folder with me, and I read through newspaper articles and bulletins and such. In the early 1990s, one of the major rifts between the city, the police chief within the POA, was community policing. This is not going away. It's been here a long time, and it's not only San Jose. It's how people do business with people, and it's not easy. But the discussion needs to be had.
So I want the discussion to happen. We are the place for it to happen, and I don't know that there's any place else. We won't. And there's no other way that I see to do it. I see no other avenue to insert that conversation credibly.
That was one of our first items. Remember, Aranda was her name, from District 5?
Elsie?
Elsie? And she wanted, she had conversations with us all the time about that. She thought it was so important. But I don't know what we did to it. It dropped. Because it had to do with, it starts with that 6 month, thing.
Well, we've been through a variety of police chiefs. You guys even hosted a reception for one of the police chiefs going back a few years ago where you were building the bridges regarding community policing and other things, and then all of a sudden he left, and that went by the wayside.
We used to, once in a while, not be here. I mean, we have met in other locations other than
Well,
here.
and that's actually a very good point that's been brought up before about bringing the neighborhoods commission meetings out into the community.
Right.
Maybe do a pilot where instead of having it here at City Hall, where as you can see you have a lot of in the audience, is perhaps do it out in one of your districts. I do want to bring out a couple of different things that logistically are going to be an issue, although it's been done and I'd have to research it. One is, we have to record these meetings because that's part of Sunshine. So we'd have to figure that logistical thing over. The second thing is we need a large enough meeting space to accommodate 20 of you sitting around a table with room for an audience. So it isn't just simply having a library room where you could, have X amount of people. You have to have a big enough space to be able to do that. Sadly, there's not a lot of public spaces that are available big enough at times for that. But we could try a pilot where, you could move it out to a district that would be willing to host it, and then see how that reception would be. and then, not hold all the meetings, but certainly, maybe 3 or 4 times a year, get it out in the community so that people can actually come and see what the Neighbors Commission does. So that might be part of your discussion moving forward, because I know that it's actually been brought up, that, you'd like to do that and try it. You guys have talked about this for years. We actually had one at Roosevelt Community Center at one point.
Yes.
We know that's big enough, but that's kind of like at City Hall. So,
It's not that far away.
it's not that far away. So it would be nice to move someplace else. Actually, I can think of a couple of places where we've had the mayor's budget meetings, where there's schools that potentially we could do it at, where it's a big enough audience with an auditorium where you could invite people, but that's actually something that would be a good idea and a precedent for the commission to do. I mean, El Viso might even be a target area simply because you folks are far enough away that you feel isolated at times. And it might not be, you've got a very tiny library though, so.
Well, the school cafeteria is, we hold meetings there sometimes. The city, when they do public notices or projects, they use the cafeteria, so it's large enough to accommodate a few, maybe 200 people or something.
Yeah, so it might be that an ad hoc committee is set up by the new commission to kind of examine potential sites. Anyway, that might be something you want to incorporate in your work plan, because, part of what you want to do is do outreach to get more involvement, and whether it's Alviso or District 10 or wherever, the far ends of the city, of a billion people, that then you could be out in the community. I mean, a perfect place that I think would be kind of fun would be
Southside.
District 2 at the Senior Center.
Yeah,
You know,
Southside Community Center.
That's a big space. You probably would get a good attendance, so I'm saying that you ought to consider that. It's up to you.
District 7,
And
we
just-
have a large area where we meet. We have a school auditorium, and it seats over 288 people there,
Yeah.
with microphones, benches, tables, and there's where I hold my meetings, neighborhood meetings. And I have a good rapport with the school district, so that could be considered.
Yeah, and I think that there's enough interest around the table that this might be an item for the new commission to look at, as to maybe do 1 or 2 meetings next year out in the community and see how that goes. Not taking anything from District 3, which is right in the middle right here. Madam Chair.
Then my other input to the work process is, work plan is not to spend too much time working on the work plan. I mean, one time I think we spent, 5 or 6 months figuring out the work plan for the year. We only had 5 or 6 months to do the work plan.
I know.
So you don't want to spend too much. Yeah, David.
2 things. First would be to an issue like community policing or your issue or any issue, to think of it as a project producing a product. And the product is, if it's to the staff or to the council, that it be a statement of position, concern, suggestion, or question that would influence. There are a lot of things you're not going to change, but the influence might be big. So just a statement from the commission about a feeling, an idea, or a response from the city will have some influence. So think of that as a work product. In looking at the work plan and future of what the commission does, how it processes work, I give consideration to thinking of it in 3 groups, 3 buckets. One would be standing administrative work. That's the agenda, the work plan, the caucus, and the things that you need to do to keep the thing running. And then you don't want to be a lot of work about just keeping it running. That should be a small portion of it, well organized and efficient. The second thing that's important that we've had all along and been kind of at the heart of this is staff and council presentations about what's important to them, to the city. Tonight was one. Time should be left for that, understanding it, getting a picture of it in advance like that slideshow, asking important questions, and offering feedback. That should be a body of work that doesn't produce anything, but it's interaction.
Right.
And the third would be projects, maybe no more than 3. Okay, like the one you discussed, and other people have brought up. Sort through them, put them on the wall, sort them out, and pick 3. And leave room for the other 2, and others to fall in. But structure it that way, and when you report back to the council, you can report in these 3 terms, not mix it all up and say, what did we did, and have people say, what do you do? Well, we do this, we do this, we do this, but where does it fit? You have to keep the business running, you have to listen to other people and take presentations and feedback, and then there has to be some product out of this place. And it's been kind of difficult as we've grown to this point, but it's getting better. And I think it's getting 4 legs under it.
Can I say something
Sure.
out of sync? I worked on 2, I phone banked for 2 people who were running for this election. And the first time I saw one of those smear things that came in the mail, I couldn't believe, the lies. And how they don't have to answer to anybody. They can just say exactly what they want to say. And it only has to have a, little tiny piece of the truth, and otherwise they blow it up. And I was so angry that I called up the Santa Clara University, the Marcellus Center, and I talked to some lawyer after I talked to some other people, and she said, there's nothing you can do. She said, you just, the candidate who's been, smeared, addresses the issue and pivots, and that's all you can do. And I said, well, it's not going to stop, and it didn't stop. It was just horrible. But what they did at Santa Clara, the town, the city, they stopped all that stuff because, and she explained to me, it has to happen before the election. It can't happen after the stuff happens. You can't, take it back. The people who are running for office have to agree to a certain type of behavior, certain ethical behavior. And I was thinking, is that something we could do to help? I mean, this body, or at least have someone from that center talk to us about the ethics of running a campaign that is ethical? It's not on our business?
No.
Going back to what the 6 years I've been here, that would take a small group of people of the commission who have a concern, passion, understanding about that, to work on their own, to develop information, talk to people, and come back and present that share that with the commission, have the commission discuss it, maybe do it a second round, and then have the commission decide on how they would like to respond to that issue, in a suggestion, an idea, or recommendation. But it's going to take 1, getting some information, 2, people digesting it and learning more about it, and 3, developing a consensus on how to share that response with the city. We can't just talk about it, spin our wheels, and say next.
But
Right.
to have like a clean city, I mean, that would be such a big deal. Because
Freedom of-
Santa Clara, it has a clean city now.
Freedom of speech, you can say anything you
You
want
can
to
say
about
anything
anything.
unless you agree, beforehand not to say BS, baloney.
Well, my question is whether or not that is under the venue or the jurisdiction of the city, since it is a county issue.
No,
Under the
it wasn't the
register.
city of Santa
How
Clara.
is this an issue for our committee? Is my
But-
question.
Yeah.
Maybe we should
She
be
was trying
working
to
on
make
things
the
that are
city of San
under-
Jose more nice to live in and such, but how's it a neighborhood issue, I guess? Maybe
Should
like-
ethics committee next door, I think that probably needs to be good.
People were really disturbed by the junk
Yeah.
that came in the mail. I heard from a lot of
Oh,
people.
yeah, we got a lot of calls.
Because we love the 2 people that they were assailing, They're people who have been very,
I'll tell you stories afterwards.
yeah, right.
So, yes,
Vampire stories.
Yes, on the same subject that we have brought up, I called code enforcement because they were putting campaign banners, signs all over on county property too. And I called them, I made a report on it, that they're placed illegally and they should come down. And if they don't come down within a period of time, then code enforcement should place a fine on those candidates. Because they are illegal, and they're, like you said, belittling our community badly. And if I take it upon myself, take them down, I might have a problem. So that's the reason I called code enforcement. They did come down and took some down, but I went by there again, new signs are up again, even though the election's over. But I did see the new signs up again from those candidates.
Okay, so anyhow, that's input for the working plan, or do you have
I
another?
have a couple examples. So, thank you, Commissioner Dearborn. A few examples. I think we've already started down the track of actionable, deliverable, real-world results that I think you're talking about. One is in the form of what Commissioner Polstead provided to us today, the result of, I think, a very nice collaborative work that Robert worked on, that Pete worked on. We had the city come in and speak with us, and many of us are now holding maps of dumping sites that we can start to integrate with our neighbors to find out what they're seeing. Where I think that provides feedback to the communities about what neighborhoods commissioners do. And I think in many ways this is shaping up to be a model for the new style of projects that we might wish to take on in the future. Two, I think while it's not complete yet, the work product development process that I've had the privilege to work on, which I'm not pitching, but I'm noting that there's an actual document that someone can read in real time, whether it's finalized or not by the next round. The next commissioners will actually have that and can review it. So starting to look at what we can actually touch, feel, and action, I think is really a great focus.
Okay, so the work plan is going to talk under item 7.
I wasn't trying to switch the topic, just use it as an example.
Okay, so that,
I have one safety
public
idea,
safety is.
public safety idea for us, and I proposed it to the mayor when he was, our district presentation of the budget overlapped our meeting last month. So I went to the meeting in Berryessa that the neighbor, that the mayor actually presented about, the budget. And one of the things that I mentioned to him, and the transportation people were there, several years ago I read an article about a small town in the Midwest who had 19 traffic deaths a year, and when they switched out their street lights, they removed all their street lights and replaced all of their intersections with roundabouts, and their death rate dropped to 0, which is our goal. And the transportation people, actually after I mentioned that, because people were like, roundabouts, really? But it turns out they said that if somebody's hit at 20 miles an hour, that your chances of surviving that are 80%. If you're hit at 40 miles an hour, your chances of surviving that are 20%. And that when you have roundabouts, the traffic accidents that you tend to have, number one, pedestrians are more, like, okay, when you look at those cars, and cars are more, let me look at the cars, and you get these kind of accidents where cars are scraping into each other, as opposed to these kind of accidents, where they're slamming into each other and T-boning and killing pedestrians. Anyway, so on safety, I would like for us to propose that some of our neighborhood intersections are transferred to roundabouts.
So, like general traffic calming, would that be in the category?
It helps on traffic calming, and it
There are other
specifically
traffic
helps on
calming
safety.
solutions too.
I think it's achievable.
And also, street lights are expensive to install and to maintain.
So as they get rid of the streetlights.
Roundabouts,
Hmm. Okay, so those are topics.
Listen, on the night that we had our caucus, I don't know the woman, you may know her, Marie, she came up, she said that she came to sit in on the last meeting, and that she had told her neighbors about the suggestion I made about before the holidays, before the 4th of July, that the fire department send something out like the Amber Alert to warn people of how much they would be charged if they violate, yeah, how much they would be fined and all of that. So that is something I don't think we've received any feedback, that I look at as something that is still pending yet. The impact should be very, very, almost zero as to what they can do.
Yeah, I don't have an answer to that. I remember the comment that was made.
Well, I just would like to put that down as something we suggest.
So a follow-up on the fire, you're looking fireworks.
Yep.
Okay, so I think you have enough stuff to start
That's
thinking about
under the-
next month,
That would be
2
a
months,
subcategory under.
2 months from now. So this is just to start the process, not my problem. Okay, I want to take out of order I have a short term here. I want to get the meeting minutes out of the way.
Okay.
So now that we have a forum here, we have the minutes in hand. Look at it very quickly. They're very simple. It basically says, it's agenda and says, we listened, we talked, we voted to write a letter. Does anybody want to make a motion to accept the minutes?
I make a motion to accept the minutes.
Do I have a second? Okay, any in favor? Any opposition? Any discussion first? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we have minutes. Okay, wanted to, we're trying to get out of here early.
You're ready.
I'm a short term.
So are we.
I have senioritis here, whatever it is. I was up too late watching the election returns last night. I had some
I
friends.
was too.
Some friends.
ROE.
So moving forward,